This is the DPW Public Works Commission meeting for July 17th, 2024. And this is our first meeting of the fiscal year. Our agenda is online here, and the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I second.
All right, we have Commissioner Barr, Commissioner O'Neill, and Vivanco. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it's unanimous. We have an agenda. So the second item is the election of chair, vice chair, and secretary for the fiscal year FY25 that starts at this meeting. So for the public, we have the three positions that are voted on at the beginning of each fiscal year. The chair normally runs the meetings. The vice chair is there to support as needed and to facilitate if the chair is not present. And then the secretary is in charge of managing minutes and any official correspondence of the committee. Typically, of the commission. Typically, that position has historically been a staff position. A staff member can be appointed or elected into the secretary role. And if I understand correctly, our staff person, Val Ducharme, is willing to continue in that role. And so should the commission want to nominate Val Ducharme for the role of secretary, we are in support of that. So with that context, are there any nominations for the officers for FY25?
I would like to nominate, what do I call you? Commissioner Damiani for chair, and Commissioner Fox in absentia as vice chair, although I had contact and there's an email from Commissioner Fox. And also nominate Val to be our secretary.
Okay, so
I'll second that.
we have a proposed slate. Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill, Vivanco, and Commissioner Barr. Is there any other nomination? All right, seeing none, then let's vote on the slate as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Commissioner Sears, just making sure. Did
She
you?
voted aye. Aye.
She
just
voted
waved.
aye.
She waved to one of her kids.
Okay.
Yeah,
Making-
they too support the slate.
Excellent. Just confirming, so the record will state that it was unanimous. And with that, I have the great opportunity of thanking past chair O'Neill Vivanco for your service
I'll be back.
and continuing on the commission. And then welcome to our current chair then, Commissioner Damiani. So I'm going to turn it over to you to facilitate the rest of the meeting.
Excellent, thank you. First, I just wanted to welcome Commissioner Davis to the commission, effective this meeting.
Yeah.
So welcome. I think I think this will be exciting opportunity to work on all the issues that Public Works covers. We'll start with public forum. Is there anyone in person?
Hi, my name is Julia Hondel. I'm a resident of Ward 4 here in Burlington. I went through the Burlington School District, K-12. I was a student commissioner on the Burlington School Board for 3 years in high school, and now I'm a UVM student. I just wanted to talk about the residential parking permits that's up on the agenda tonight. I'm just disappointed in Burlington how, while I'm glad there is an increase in fees from $10 and $20 to $20 and $40 respectively, Burlington could increase it more. Burlington's facing chronic budget issues and continues to subsidize on-street parking, and this isn't even to mention the subsidies for the parking garage on Sundays. That's a different issue that's not on the agenda tonight. The average parking space is about $100 a month or $1,200 a year. In a competitive market, this is what the prices should be similar to. But Burlington has the opportunity to increase on-street parking fees by much more to reduce the burden on taxpayers, especially our lower income taxpayers, which are mostly a part of the global majority. And this would allow the city either to not increase taxes by as large of a percentage every year, or to use the tax dollars from residents for other causes in the city, like fixing potholes on the street, rather than paying for, like, subsidizing all these parking spaces. Because many people constantly talk about the potholes and just other maintenance around the city, where we could be using the tax dollars instead. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have anyone online for public comment?
Yeah, Sharon Busher's up in queue.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Sharon Busher, and I live up near the hospital. And I also want to speak about the residential parking fees. I have no problem with the proposed increase. But I just wanted to just reference what the first speaker said. A lot of the areas that benefit from this program are those that have low income people who don't have adequate off-street parking. So it works to their benefit. And that is why some of the fees, I believe, are kept more reasonable. So I just wanted to make that comment to the commission. But I did want to speak about the fact that you implemented a program that took away the visible sticker that was put on the bumper of the car to be a digital sticker that you saw, but residents couldn't. There was a partnership to help enforce and to deal with violations. That partnership eroded when there was no longer that ability to figure out if somebody was illegally parking or not. And so currently, I live up near the hospital and UVM, and so there is a lot of problem. And I live in a neighborhood that is old, and a lot of the houses don't have adequate off-street parking, and a lot of the houses have been turned into rental units where there are so many cars that are associated with it that they can't accommodate those cars off-street. So the problem is that if we think there's a violator, we have to call and then someone has to come up. That gets to the point of enforcement. If you're downtown, I work for the government now, not the city government, the federal government. So when you're downtown, there's visibility from enforcement officers dealing with parking violators. But if you live in the more areas farther from downtown, I rarely see anybody up in my neck of the woods unless I call to say this may be a violator. And so even when there's a Lake Monsters game, there's nobody there to help enforce, and lots of people don't park on the lot. They're not allowed to. So there are violations, and they go, well, you don't capture the money, and we end up with, if you don't have adequate off-street parking, we end up without the ability to have visitors come to our house. So I think the program needs to be revisited, not just the fees, but the program needs to be relooked at. When you implement something new, I would really like to have a validation or a relook at that program to make sure it's working the way you intended. And I don't believe that was ever done. One last thing, I know it's 3 minutes and I apologize, but I did want to speak about the parking garages and the fees that are increased downtown. Because I was on the mayor's budget committee, the new mayor's budget committee, I had reason to be downtown and use the parking garages, and left those meetings early evening. I didn't feel safe. First of all, they reek. They smell. They're terrible. And I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm just talking about urine, and it's disgusting. And then the other thing is that there are activities going on that do not make an older woman, maybe anybody, feel safe. So I really question how the department can recommend raising those fees, knowing the situation in those structures. I don't go downtown anymore, and I love Burlington. Was on the city council for 32 years, and I still care deeply about it. But there are lots of problems. We all know them. But I just question raising those fees without addressing the safety and the cleanliness, security of those parking structures. I'll leave it there, but thank you so much. As I said, I'm not opposed to the proposed increase in fees. I think they're nominal, and I do believe that you do need to generate money for programs that you provide for the residents of Burlington. So thank you again.
Thank you. Rob, anyone else online?
We have someone who joined by phone, and if you are intending to speak during public comment, please use the *9 feature to raise your hand now or in the future. This time, there's no one in queue.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. So next is the consent agenda. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second that.
All those in favor, please go ahead by saying aye.
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 Justine, is that an aye for you? Aye for myself. No nays, I guess, so we'll move on. Next agenda item is residential parking permit rate change.
Hi, I'm Mark Bilodeau, parking manager, and you know Jackie. What's that, the mayor?
No.
Is that what you said?
That would only be not say that. Okay.
I don't know what you said.
Hi. We're gonna talk about the rate changes for residential parking.
So we presented this 2 months ago. It had, I think, a little bit of a different form then. So this is the adaptation to what we feel needs to happen from this point forward. The background is that we have 48 streets currently enrolled. It's $10, as mentioned by the public, that it's $10 now. We are per year per permit. Renters are allowed 3 permits. Owners are allowed 4. Owners can purchase for 1 or 2 years. Renters can only purchase on a yearly basis. The last time this was modified was in 2018. The call was for recommended updates every 5 years. And as currently in ordinance, 50% of the residents need to approve in order for a street to become a residential permit-only parking. So we are suggesting doubling that cost to $20 per permit per year, and including the currently free streets. There are 2, and I am blanking on the 2 that they are. One is North Williams.
Bradley and North
And Bradley,
Williams.
yep.
Yeah.
So those would be $10 per year, as opposed to the 20, increasing their fee from nothing to $10 per year. And this is to cover the costs of program implementation. In 2018, that cost was estimated at $60,000 a year. And referencing the comprehensive user fee study of comparable cities, The fee for residential parking ranged from free to $100 per year. And the parking permits are seen somewhat as a disincentive to overselling street capacity. So, which was part of the original plan of that graduated fee structure that we had, which we have gone away from. So right now we have almost 1,800 residential permits that are active. The yearly revenue is a little over $21,000, and the proposed fee structure will increase that to over $44,000 per year. And again, we're trying to reach that operational cost that has been estimated that it takes to run the program.
That's it. Nice and quick.
Great, thank you. We'll go to commissioner comments. We'll start with Commissioner Barr.
Thank you. I too am in favor of increasing the rates, even more than you are here, but I know that it might need to be some sort of a step system. Although I do want to recognize what former City Councilor Busher said, that there are some low-income folks that this might be a challenge for them. And I don't know if there is a way for us to come up with some sort of a system for them separately that we might be able to do something. But other than that, I've always been in favor, because if you charge enough for parking, it might push people into taking the bus and walking more and biking more. So I think that's one of the important things that we need to do for them. So that's pretty much it for me.
Commissioner Sears?
Yeah, I think it's good to try and cover your costs. It seems like there's an opportunity to do more than that, potentially. It seems like most of the comments from the public and from the commissioners are that the prices are maybe too low, even with the increase.
Has a residential parking permit, and we did hear feedback from a lot of people that they did not want to see an increase. You know, taxes are going up, et cetera, and they felt like they were being extorted or something because, you know, we were about to charge more. We sent 2 emails. There was more. The first email didn't have. We had 2 fee structures in the first one, so it was the escalating option, and I think that people were definitely against that.
Yeah, well, it seems like at a minimum, you would want to cover the cost of that. I think the last thing the city wants to do is subsidize on-street parking.
Thank you, Commissioner Sears. The one piece I would add is that, yes, there are 2 revenue streams that come in from this program, the base permits and then the violations and fees. So, yes, we are moving much more positively to having the base payments for these permits to cover the operating costs of the program. The fees are over and above that and help subsidize the operation of the city. The same way that the on-street meter revenues help fund the general fund. So the base operations of the city are helped through this program, but I do believe that the base fees of this should cover the majority, if not all, of the operational costs of the program, and we're making a strong move in that direction here tonight. And I will say it is markedly noticeable that when we had the 2016 update to the residential permit parking program that Commissioner Barr was here for, it was one of the most contentious conversations we had when we debated the introduction of fees. I see Commissioner Sears nodding her head.
It's an emotional issue, absolutely, for everyone involved.
It was a huge sea change, and I actually find it quite noticeable that this year it seems like this conversation, while we've had some emails, is not generating the same amount of kind of citizen activism against this recommendation as we saw previously. So it's something to note, and we'll keep evaluating the program and how it can be effective. I appreciate
yeah, I guess I would just also
Busher's
note
comments.
that anytime you implement a system like that, you take those parking spaces away from other people, right? Other residents of the city who maybe don't live on that street. And that doesn't need to be lost, right? That's essentially that's a public space that most of the city will then no longer have access to. So it's not just about the people who live there and covering the cost of the program. It's the loss of a public good for the vast majority of visitors and residents.
We will require public parking now as part of the RPP proposals going forward.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Montano?
Alrighty. My question is regarding the costs of the program. So you mentioned $60,000 was the estimated cost in 2018. What is a more recent estimate, taking both into account the enforcement and also the staff time to actually administer the online permit system?
Yeah, so it depends on the time of the year, but we did an estimate and it was about 40,000, which is how we came up with the 20. We do receive revenue from enforcement. So the hours that we added up were in the office, the folks that are selling the permits, the cost of the hang tags, and then we did subsidize a little bit of the program that we use to enforce. So in our system, in order to get a permit, we have to put you in this program, et cetera. So we used that, and it was right around 40. So that's 40,000. So that's how we came up with the 20.
All right. So 20, you would say, is like a break-even point
Is a
currently.
break-even point, yeah.
And is there appreciable cost savings with the all online permits? And also, like, what stage is that? Are we at a place where there are both, the vignettes, right, the hang tag permits, and also all
Yes.
digital ones as
Yes.
well?
So we don't plan at this point to get away from the hang tags. So if you are a homeowner, you're able to purchase 2 hang tags and 2 permits for the vehicle, which are just based on the license plate.
So 4 total vehicles,
You're a
right?
homeowner.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you are a renter, you can purchase 3, which can be 1 license plate, 2 hang tags, or 2 license plate, 1 hang tag.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that. I still think it should be more. I think 30 is a more, I don't know, royal sum, I guess. But if it breaks even, I guess that's all right. But as we're moving towards having these bigger conversations about how we're using public space and perhaps moving towards a zoned residential parking program, I definitely want to see, like, well, what is a fair market rate, right? How would we even go about accounting for that as a city? And how do we include more people in these conversations, right? Like, we all share these streets. So I think before we go about making a radical change like that we really include everyone, and we're really deciding, like, what it really shouldn't come down to whether or not the owners of the property on a given street decide that they want to charge their tenants or whatever for parking. I think it's something we need to decide at the level of the city, and I feel like we're going in that right direction. So I think this is an okay step in that direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm new here, obviously, so please bear with me. Some of my questions may have already been answered in the past. But in terms of the establishing residential parking permits in an area, you mentioned that takes 50% of the residents at, of course, that point in time. Is it possible to rescind the residential parking permits?
I can.
Yeah, Philip Peterson, Senior Transportation Planner. Yeah, so resident parking, first of all, it has to be in a designated zone. So we're thinking about resident parking permits. It's in areas like next to the hospital, the baseball field, the university, Champlain College, things like that. So you have to start with that. Is it in a designated zone? And then over 50% of property owners, not residents, have to sign off on saying, yes, my property, I'm interested in having resident parking. And just like establishing resident parking it can be rescinded, but it has to be agreed upon by the neighborhood. And we try and front end a lot of these conversations as city staff by walking neighborhoods through these processes so they fully understand what it means to have resident parking and what it means to get rid of it. And as Chapin already discussed and alluded to, our policy since 2017 has been any new RPP street has to be balanced with some element of public parking, because as Commissioner Mutano had pointed out, it's a balance of needs. We're not just gonna give the street just to property owners. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's great to hear and answer some of the questions that I didn't even ask, which is always nice. In terms of so attempting to read through the kind of, I guess, like amended change, I just want to clarify that it's not that a homeowner can have 4 permits. It's that an owner of a property which has 1 dwelling unit can have 4 permits.
Correct.
Okay, and then so it's not just renters, but it's anyone that is on a property that has more than 1 unit then is who's restricted to the 3 tags or kind of permits.
Right, 3 permits.
Okay,
So if there's 4 units on a property, they can get 12 as a 1 unit.
right, okay. As a renter myself, like, probably this will become readily apparent, but that's something that's very important to me, is that places are not overly dominated by property owners rather than residents. So I was happy to see that it was based on the number of dwelling units and not simply kind of a marker of ownership or lack thereof. Let's see, I think I had one more question. I guess I have a comment or two and then possibly a question. And feel free to jump in on any of these comments, anyone that has something to say. But so I took Commissioner Sears's note that perhaps there's less input this time because it's less well-known to those who are not already affected by the resident parking. You kind of don't, you've got that selection going on of emailing the people that already have the residential parking. And of course, they're acutely aware of it and kind of know all of its ins and outs rather than kind of a member of the public that doesn't live in that area. But I also think an additional feature since 2016, when many of this might have been evaluated, is lower demand for parking based simply on working from home becoming more predominant in just the country as a whole post-pandemic. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think that's at least possible. That may not be the case, but it seems possible to me. In terms of the dollar figure, so other commissioners have already said that the pricing, maybe there's room for higher pricing. In terms of implementation, I'm curious what, and again, this is something that probably like optimally I would know already, but I don't. But what levers are there? And what I'm asking is, for instance, like say income, because we know that in the city there's already housing that's restricted based on income. So is it not possible to use that as kind of a lever for a smaller fee associated with parking coming from a unit that is already designated as a low-income unit? Is that considered? Is that a lever at all? Is that not allowed for discriminatory reasons? Like, I'm curious to know.
It's not levered right now. I think as someone working in the parking services office, we'd have to figure out how to integrate that with zoning perhaps, but it's something, someone else had suggested that a couple of months ago as well in an email, and I think that's something we could look into.
Thank you. I will say it's a great question and one that we are having multi-departmental discussions around, because there are many programs within the city where we are trying to get more of the full cost of the program baked into the price while still having an accommodation for folks who may be low income or have special needs. The challenge is ultimately eligibility and the administrative burden of determining eligibility. And so we are having conversations with BED and with our water team at Public Works and Parks and BCA, who offer programs to kids and adults, to try to figure out how we're going to get better at affordability when we look at increasing prices for the general public. So what I'd say is we're trying to work through that. It's a complicated angle. Give us some time, but you're asking the same questions we are.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for that
Yep.
information. Something else I just thought of is each permit is for a single space, right? Meaning, say you were bringing in a U-Haul to move in, and that takes up more than one space. How would that be handled in this kind of system?
If you had a hang tag, you could park a U-Haul for 2 days.
Okay.
It
and
doesn't restrict to the size of the space.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. That seems pretty parsimonious.
It also doesn't guarantee a space.
Right.
Right, right. Okay, I think that's probably it for right now, unless I think of something else. But thank you very much for the information and what you're already thinking about. That's great.
Commissioner O'Neill-Levanco?
Okay. So thanks for the explanation. I really like the idea that these increase in fee will get to at least cover the baseline of the program. Echo what other folks said about, increasing it a little bit more while recognizing that we do have some low-income families, and appreciate the balance of coming to some kind of number or space of how to evaluate who is eligible and how to administer that. The high cost of car ownership. I do like the idea, as was suggested in one of the comments, and I've mentioned this before, zone parking.
Yeah.
Because it does make it really difficult as someone who is on a street that's surrounded by resident-only parking, and as you know, it's come to bite me. Enforcement, as Sharon Bushra mentioned, with the administrative ease of having the virtual permits, that's great, but as she mentioned, the inability then for residents to kind of monitor and, call for enforcement. Have you had, how are you reconciling that? How frequently do the enforcement folks go out on their 48 streets? That's a lot. That's a lot of time. I see them come by my area at least twice.
We've broken up the city into north and south and have a list of all the residential streets in the north and in the south. And a PSA that it has a vehicle will check off all of those streets every day.
Okay.
So they are all the streets are have eyes on at least once per day.
Okay. And I appreciate what Commissioner Sears mentioned about public right-of-way. And we have streets, and having lived on both sides of town here, at least in Center City, the congestion, RPP came probably as a result of overflow parking from UVM Medical Center, Champlain College, students and staff parking on residential streets, having driveways blocked, not being able to, have a kid's birthday party because there's no parking for, 8 blocks or something like that. So I recognize that this program came as a result of some of that, But then you have like boulevards where there's not one car on the street, like Summit, for example. And then other more congested areas where there are folks who don't have a driveway and must park on the street. So I think this policy of, you know, we took a problem and hit it with a sledgehammer, and we need to get maybe a couple other tools in there to kind of fine tune it for the different sections of our city and those needs. So I think this is a great start, and hope we can continue to move forward on the balance of the needs of keeping open some space for residents, and then pushing UVM, the medical center in Champlain, to keep their people on their parking areas. That's all.
Great. Yeah, I echo a lot of comments, particularly the looking at zone parking as a near-term solution to sort of fine-tune some of these things. Agreed that it should probably be higher. I'd be curious just to put it into the broader context of all the city fees. Where is the sort of city fee study that I think was mentioned when this was presented 2 months ago at, and could you maybe cite just some other examples that the city is looking at sort of enacting, not necessarily related to DPW, but I just want to put that into context that the city is looking at a lot of other fees, and we're not alone as the only department looking to recoup some of these costs.
Yes, I appreciate that comment, because, yes, this fee increase was recommended as part of the user fee study, along with several others. Particularly, there was an ambulance transport fee, which was recently increased by approval of the City Council on Monday night. And then there have been increases in fees for camps through Parks and Burlington City Arts, as well as some others, I believe, in the clerk treasurer's office. So it gives you a kind of broad sense that the city was looking across the board to make sure that fees generally were covering the cost of the service, and I think that's what you're seeing in front of you tonight. And I really appreciate the Commission's ongoing interest in reviewing and refining the RPP program. I think there's a lot of merit to the zone parking. It was a recommendation in 2016 that was very strongly opposed. So it went from being a recommendation to move in 2016 to zone parking to one where we would explore it. So that doesn't bind your hands. We can explore it now. So we look forward to doing that review with you in the future.
Great. And just for historical context, back in 2016 when this was originally implemented, what was the conversation like with those institutional partners that were, I think cited earlier as sort of the part of the causing the downstream effect of those folks parking on these residential streets and neighbors wanting some sort of program like this to go into effect?
And what were the institutional partners' positions?
Yes.
So I will say it was great to hear from former counselor and former DPW Commissioner Sharon Busher tonight. She was one of the people who helped found the residential permit parking program due to impacts around Centennial Field back in the 1990s. Sharon, you can of course correct me if I get any of my facts wrong, but out of greater concern for parking around the institutions is what required them to produce their joint institutional parking management plan that has to be presented to the city, I believe, every 5 years. And I believe some of the commissioners here have been very involved in that in the past. That's still a document that is worked on by the institutions and presented to the city to try to lessen the impact from the institutions on the neighborhoods. I think we have a very keen awareness of how much vitality the institutions bring to our community, and we need to celebrate that. At the same time, regulating that in a way that works for the community and its diverse needs is an important thing. So,
great, thank you.
Yep.
Can I add something to that as a former University of Vermont Director for Transportation and Parking? I was very much in favor of residential parking because trying to get people to park on campus where we have enough spots for all the people that attend that need to park, but they just don't want to pay the extra money when it's free to park in the neighborhoods. They would always just spill over in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I would constantly get calls from Champlain College, hey, you need to come and give your guys some tickets. And I said, I don't have authority to write tickets for city streets. So the residential parking was very much in favor of, at least from the University of Vermont standpoint.
Excellent, thank you. Public comment. Is there anybody else that has additional comments for this particular agenda item?
We do have one member online, JHP. You're up in queue.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
We're doing public comment.
Yeah, I live on Case Parkway off East Avenue, and I honestly don't understand why I have to pay to park on my street. It just seems like it's just one of the city services. Right now, I live off East Avenue, as I said, and East Avenue, the Department of Public Works, I'm guessing, is installing traffic calming structures on East Avenue. And I'm guessing you're not going to bill me for those. Why would you charge me to park on my own street?
Yes, respond to that?
Yeah.
Great. So as part of the review of the residential permit parking program back in 2016, basically the thought was, as part of the review of the program, which had been around since the 1990s, was that for the extra level of service of regulating parking in that neighborhood and on that street, in order to give residents more consistent access to parking adjacent to their properties, that the people who are benefiting from that program should pay the cost of the program. If the neighbors do not want that program and want an unregulated street parking arrangement, they would not need to pay for that. And the balance is a completely unregulated street would allow more users to park in a harder time for residents to access their home. So this additional level of service, we are seeking to cover the cost of that specific optional program. If people on Case Parkway would like to petition to remove the program, they are more than welcome to explore that with our senior transportation planner, Philip Peterson.
Just to add one thing.
And can I ask if you are touring the street too often? I mean, how often do you actually find someone parking who doesn't have a resident permit?
I would imagine people get fined every day. Thanks so much for your questions and comments. Philip Peterson with Senior Transportation Planner for the City of Burlington. So when we instituted the last additional fee structure in 2019, one of the things that I think maybe Chapin forgot is streets can also elect to institute that do not have an element of public parking on it. They can agree to have that public parking added to their street and still have RPP and have the fee waived. I don't know if we're still half price. Okay, so if folks on Case Parkway would like to institute, we still have RPP, but we're willing to allow an element of public parking on our street, then you can also have your fee lowered. Happy to discuss further as well offline over email.
How many spaces would that translate to for public parking?
I'm not quite sure how many spaces there are on Case Parkway.
The way that the program operates is that on the streets where we have the half-priced RPP permits, is that up to 4 hours of public parking is permitted on the streets. So it allows short-term public parking, but allows residents, affords still residents greater access because people are not parking there all day. And happy to talk details with you offline with Senior Transportation Planner Philip Peterson.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else online for public comment?
No, at this time, there's no one in queue.
Great.
I did get an email from Commissioner Fox, so I just wanted to make note of her comment. She supported the fee increase. $20 still felt too inexpensive for her. Just for reference, she pays $75 a month to park her car at her apartment complex. Residential students at both UVM and Champlain pay at least $175 per semester to park cars on campus. Not saying that it should be those prices, but just for reference point, when she says $20 a year feels too low. And then she did have a question, wondering if it was possible to include any formal language about the commission reviewing this program every other year instead of every 5 years. This way it sort of aligns with the 2-year permit option, which I thought was a good idea, and we like that. So we could come back in 2 years and reevaluate cost of the program, et cetera.
Great, thank you. I like that. I'm looking for.
I make a motion to approve staff's recommendation to include the review every 2 years.
I second the motion for the staff's language on the parking permit and to evaluate every 2 years. Did I get that?
Yes.
What he said.
Almost exactly what I said.
So we'll go to a vote.
All right, two points of clarification.
Discussion, sorry.
All right. But, all right, first of all, would that language regarding the 2-year reconsideration be put into the ordinance? Would that be language at the level of ordinance, or just a direction for a future commission, right, with staff to bring up this issue again in 2 years? Like, can we compel a future commission to take up an issue in that way?
Yeah, the recommendation to review every 5 years was not an ordinance, it was a recommendation in the plan. This motion, as we understand it, would not change ordinance, it would just indicate direction from the commission. We as staff understand your interest in zone parking, and I think our interest is to review that as soon as we have capacity to do so. If we can do that in the near term, we will. I know Philip is down one member of his planning team. So I think if you give us some latitude and continue to ask updates, we will try to front load the review of that zone parking recommendation that so many of you have suggested we review tonight. And the every 2-year piece, I think, would just be an understood agreement between the commission and staff, and we're open to that motion.
All right, so I'm friendly to that particular amendment. But the second point, or question I had, is regarding the 4-hour guest parking. So far are the only 2 streets that are subject to that: Bradley Street near the YMCA and North William Street, which I believe was just added in the past 6 months. So those are the only 2 at this point?
There's a few spaces up on South Prospect Street, but it's just, I think, 4 spaces, not the whole street.
It's fairly limited.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's something that we can discuss when we do the update.
The zone parking.
Okay.
Which may happen this year.
Got it. All right. Those are my 2 points.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had one question, which is just, what is the zone parking that's being referenced, potentially?
It's our, it's not a fantasy, it's like this, an idea where sections, and I don't know how they would be broken up, but sections of city would have, if there's residential parking, you could park on any street. So there's some of us who are surrounded by residential only parking. And so if there's, say, like water work on our street or something, you can't park anywhere else because it's all residential parking because you live on a street that is not resident parking. So there's some folks who live on a street, they live on a corner, and one street where their address is resident only and the other one is not. So that's, or vice versa, that's where it kind of gets complicated. So a zone would mean people in this neighborhood would have access to those spaces. Is that, am I, can I apply for a job there?
You're hired.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could add that when we recently removed parking from Colchester Avenue, there was a whole group of properties that no longer had any parking at all. And to say that they would all park on my street, for instance, Chase Street, would be too much for my street. But then when there's another street, Barrett Street, and there's another street, Grove Street, if you make the whole thing a zone, then all they have to do is find a spot within the old East End, as it were. And that would have been perfect, but I couldn't get 50% of the property owners to do it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you for that information.
Any other comments?
Motion on the floor.
Great. All those in favor of the motion and second, signify by saying aye.
With the amendment?
Oh, yes, with the
right,
amendment.
The amendment has passed already?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Did she?
Wait, can you, does this have the recommendation for revisiting in 2 years?
Yes, that was included, yeah.
Okay. I feel like we've talked about it enough. I don't know. I mean, I think I guess I would just leave it up to the department to bring it forward when needed, but.
I look at the increase as potentially saying that, all right, in 2 years, we might raise it a little more, rather than wait
Okay.
5 years to relook at it again and have $20 per year for the next 5 years versus what if
Right.
prices spike and, so.
But there's nothing stopping them from bringing it sooner, is there?
Nope.
It's on us
Okay.
as a commission to an extent. We could add
Yeah,
such an
we could
agenda
bring-
item
yeah.
to any meeting and address this exact ordinance language and say, now it's $30, right? With
Probably not next week.
Yeah. There's a certain process, but yeah, within 2 years, I think taking up this issue further, and I think
Okay.
it's kind of mutual, right? That is something that we're all interested in taking up.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Continue the vote. The motion and second still on the floor. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Aye for myself. Passes. Let's see, we
Thank
move.
you.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, downtown speed limit.
Maybe you did. Sit right next to you, Chief. All right.
While you're setting it up, I'll just say, staff's excited to bring this update to you. We're not seeking action tonight, but we heard significant support among the commission about carrying out a recommendation from the 2011 transportation plan to look at establishing a lower speed limit in the downtown. And we're going to give a brief update today. And based on your comments, as long as there's continued support, we look to actually bring an ordinance to effectuate the change of a lowered speed limit in the coming months.
Excellent. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. Philip Peterson, Senior Planner with the City of Burlington Public Works. So we are here to talk about slow streets and also speed compliance, because that's kind of a thing that goes hand in hand. So just an overview, what our anticipated proposal will be, what the recommendations from current city plans, how we kind of came up with these numbers, what the benefits and the concepts are of slow streets, our compliance strategies, and then an overall timeline. First, before we do that, we do need to just kind of talk about state law real quick. So state law, the minimum speed limit's 25 miles per hour. However, there is a provision within Title 24, which has to do with municipalities and county governments, that basically states that in a downtown district, which we have in the city of Burlington, you can have a posted speed limit of less than 25 miles per hour. That's directly from that law. So in terms of the proposed initiative, we would propose that the downtown core would be a 20-mile-per-hour zone. This proposed initiative would aim to enhance safety and improve the overall livability of the area. The likely recommendation is based on the 2011 transportation plan and Plan BTV walk bike. So yeah, the 2011 transportation plan, which is outdated, does need to be updated. We'll be talking about that soon. We're working with the CCRPC on getting some UPWP funds secured for that update. And in the 2011 Burlington Transportation Plan, central to the plan is the concept of slow streets in the downtown core where a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit is proposed to prioritize pedestrian and cyclist safety. And this is kind of the underlying philosophy of having these slower streets in the downtown core, increasing speeds when we talk about arterials and other collectors to circulate people and get traffic moving, but that downtown core having that 20 mile per hour. So this is directly from the 2011 transportation plan, just kind of repeating myself in accordance with the 2011 Burlington transportation plan. Specific streets within the downtown core would be designated for a reduced speed limit of 20 miles per hour. And within our recommendation, we would include Main Street, Battery Street, South Winooski, Pearl. All those arterials would be 20 mile per hour zones. And that's what they're designed for. Main Street, Great Street does have a design speed of 20 miles per hour. This is more just for the records for the presentation. This is basically reiterating the same thing, but this is out of Plan BTV, walk, bike, recommending a 20 mile per hour downtown streets slow zone. So just to kind of go over some data that we already know, when we think about pedestrian fatality versus speed, rates increase dramatically when vehicle speeds are higher at 20 miles per hour. The risk of fatality for a pedestrian being struck by a vehicle, survivability is about 90 to 95%. You can see how it just jumps exponentially. And so when we're reducing that speed, it substantially reduces likelihood of severe injuries or fatalities in the event of a crash. Oh, that's not showing up correctly. You can imagine some bubbles here that would show field of vision. I don't know why it's not showing up, but just use your imagination. You can see it here. You can see it right here. It was great when I put it together. Anyway, so the field of vision significantly narrows as vehicles go faster, right? It's kind of like that what you can see gets smaller and smaller and smaller depending on how fast you're going. Oh, well, there it is. Well, what the heck? Not to scale, by the way. Another graphic just to kind of show stopping distance. The stopping distance of vehicle obviously increases exponentially again with speed. You have your perception, you got your reaction distance, and then your braking distance. And as we go slower, you get more benefit. So let's get into some challenges and some solutions. So one of the big challenges is achieving driver compliance when we're talking about creating these speed limits and ensuring drivers adhere to this new speed limit. Without the proper compliance, the safety benefits of the slow zone cannot be fully realized. Drivers may be resistant to change, and that can kind of be a problem. Balancing different modes of transportation, we have buses, we have bikes, pedestrians, a lot of street users, and we want to ensure safety and efficiency for all the users. And how we can do that is effective street design. We've learned a lot over the past few years. Community engagement and education. One thing that is a little bit weak for the city team is enforcement, and we kind of understand that. Burlington Police Department does have some staff shortages, and so enforcement's difficult for them, and effective enforcement is tough. But when you have effective street design, you can make up for a lot of those things. But let's get into design just a little bit. We're talking about how we're talking about design, what happens. It's all about space, right? You go out on the interstate, it's wide, it's flat, it's long, there's not a lot of access points. It invites you to go fast. When we're talking about these slower streets, lane widths are much smaller. You have tighter curb radius, which makes drivers make more deliberate and slower turns, enhancing pedestrian safety and reducing the likelihood of high-speed crashes. And also using different materials, traffic calming features. And those are all things that we're using on Main Street Great Streets, which is designed for 20 miles per hour. And one thing I definitely wanted to address, because it came up during the Burlington Walk Bike Council in June and July, is what about going less than 20 miles per hour? Let's just address that state law says less than 25 miles per hour is fine, which means we could go less than 20 miles per hour. But that's a tough one, right? There's some design limitations when we're talking about that. Existing road infrastructure may not be easily adaptable to accommodate that extreme of a low speed. When we're talking about like 15, 10 miles per hour. We're talking about significant redesign and reconstruction efforts. That space that we have for these 20 mile per hour streets, trucks still need to make deliveries, emergency services still need to do what they need to do. And in all honesty, there's marginal safety benefits. I did a lot of research about this today. In particular, the Seattle Department of Transportation looked into this a lot, and efforts to reduce those speeds further in selected areas show only like a slight improvement in safety metrics. It's almost inconsequential. So can we go less than 20 miles per hour? Sure. And I also have a whole list of other things that I'm worried to death of this. So let's talk about timeline. So there's some information sharing that happened at Burlington Walk Bike Council in June and July. We're talking about it tonight. Rob and I met earlier today. I'm sure we're going to meet again to talk about public outreach and feedback. We do need to get with the businesses and other folks in downtown core to make sure that they understand what we're doing and what we are recommending. That'll happen over the rest of the summer, maybe into September, and then hopefully this fall, September, October, maybe November, we'll be coming back to seek approval of a 20 mile per hour zone. You like that picture on the left, Chief? Happy to take your questions.
Great, thank you. Let's start with Commissioner Mutanu.
Oh, cool.
Caught you off guard.
No, not at all. All right. So, first thing, I noticed the areas of the city's designated downtown district are quite jagged. And it includes, it looks like 1.5 blocks of Maple Street down there, plus some other places that are, only marginally in the core. Is there an idea to restrict this limit to just particular streets that are, actually really running through this area?
Yeah, we would cut that right.
Okay,
That'd
got
be
it.
20 miles per hour. It would be silly not to.
It would be.
You can go 25 in this 1 block stretch. No, it'd be 20 miles per hour within the downtown district.
Okay.
Yeah. Additional study would need to be done about our formal recommendation, but clearly
About the
we want
exact
some clear,
Yeah.
very easy to understand, slow zone areas.
Got it. Yeah, you could kind of see the real middle part there. I would say the biggest street that does stick out within that area is Battery Street.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, as it stands right now, if I drove one, right, and I was driving down Battery Street, it would look pretty silly to see a sign like that says speed limit 20 miles per hour for a major street, right, 4 lanes each side, quite wide. That was obviously designed for a much higher speed.
Right, and Battery Street's going under redesign right now.
It's getting a
Right.
road diet.
Yeah, it's getting.
It's getting a road diet.
Yes, we have a scoping study happening. We also were hoping to institute some quick build type work on Battery Street this year, but that'd be a goal for next year. Some kind of an interim design, nothing official yet, but putting Battery Street on a bit of a road diet, yeah. It does feel like it's wide, it's long, it's straight, people want to step on the gas. You're right.
All right. 20 seems like a good number all around.
It does.
Yeah. On the enforcement piece, it seemed like the decrease in traffic stops done by BPD actually precedes this staffing shortage or whatever one might want to call it now. So with the idea when such a measure would go into effect, would there be an additional enforcement piece that would be directed at this new area? Or is there any plan with regards to enforcing this new ordinance already?
I think what we can control from Public Works is the design of the street, what we do for our lane markings, for our curb, for the physical infrastructure. And we want to support BPD as best we can.
Mhm.
And we're certainly not going to tell them what to do with enforcement. They're keeping their head above water, so.
All right. Well, sounds like a lot of good stuff going on in this area, and I support the number 20. That's all.
Commissioner Barr?
Bookends. I also was going to talk about the jagged edges, knowing that it probably would be refined. And I'm of the mind that it should be slower than 20. I mean, it's 15 on campus. But I get it, and especially as Commissioner Matano pointed out, Battery Street and some of the streets are kind of open, and it's going to be very difficult to enforce, even with some infrastructure. Because, I mean, when I'm walking downtown, I can see people just, for some reason, stepping on the gas and speeding up, trying to beat the yellow light that's 2 blocks away.
Right.
I don't know why they would do that, but I'm very much in favor of this, so can't wait until it comes to a vote.
Commissioner O'Neill-Vivanco?
Thank you. Yeah, that map, it's a little hard for me to see. So of course I need to ask, is Edmonds on Main and Union included? It looks like it may be, because that,
I think Union's the last block on the
Is
right.
it the last?
Yeah, so
oh, okay.
Edmonds is off the right side, it seems.
So, will I die on this hill again and again and again?
Push
As
it
we,
up.
as we, as we put in,
It's a
see Peggy
conversation.
O'Neill complaining around Edmonds. That Union Street heading northbound across, across Main Street, it's, people go fast and blow through that light, and it's only one way part of the way, and then the other block, it's 2-way. I would love, for the sake of the 800 students who are right on that block, to see, wow, kids, let's see if you can make it across the intersection. So it would be really great to see Union Street included in that, because you have the Y, you've got City Market, you have the library, a major corridor north-south for kids who are biking and walking to school. There's a protected, there's a bike lane, as well. So that's really important to me.
Could I just ask a question about that? There's so many places where you're driving where it'll say school zone when flashing or something like that, and the speed limit's significantly lower. Is there any reason why that can't happen?
Because there isn't one on Union Street. I believe there may be one on Main Street in the decade and a half, no, 17 years that I've had kids at Edmonds. I don't know if I ever saw it flashing. Maybe it does. But I think if there are those applications, that would be a good compromise.
That way you're not expanding the downtown district, if you will, but your school zones are known for this, so.
We will check what discretion we have in statute. My understanding is that the school zones allow us to reduce to 25 miles an hour, and we will need to see how firm the designated downtown district is to see whether we can include the school. I appreciate and support your policy direction. We will see whether we have the latitude to do that.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
Right. I think what it comes down to is having the posted speed limit is one thing, but what it really comes down to is that design speed and how we design the street and how we inform drivers, because the street informs drivers. Like, we never have problems like, well, not never. We do very rarely have issues with speed adjacent to Church Street. You approach Church Street, it just demands that you slow down, even if you're on Main Street. The different textures, the different lights, the pulled-in curb, it just demands it. And so the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, how do we design this area? Or are there quick build alternatives that we can institute, that we can do quick during the school drop off and pickup, that's gonna invite drivers, hey, slow down.
I agree, and I believe that the traffic calming features,
Right.
St. Paul Street, love it,
Yeah.
love it. So I do think the design features are key. I love the 20 miles per hour. Question about buses and trucks. Thinking about what the downtown businesses will be maybe concerned about. Access, so dynamic curb space, which doesn't necessarily deal with the speed limit, but then being able to kind of get in and out and be able to unload, and then not sure, I always looked, the buses, and just, these are bigger vehicles, and their ability to accelerate and and this is a hilly area, accelerate to get up a hill, hauling a big vehicle or a truck at 20 miles per hour. So I don't know those kind of physics questions, but what maybe in the Seattle study, what has been the compliance with public transit and trucks?
Yeah, I mean, public transit, they're not really known
They're
for
not
speeding.
In downtown areas,
Yeah.
typically a bus is going at most slow,
Slow.
maybe 8 miles an hour, 8 to 12, if they're not picking anybody up at that particular time. But it's really, I think, the street design in terms of turning is really for a bus.
Yeah.
That is, there it is right there. It's
Yeah.
all about that turn.
But it's slowing it down for everyone, including, I think, even if a bus is going the speed limit or below the speed limit, it is a large vehicle, like you said, and just the feeling of a large vehicle going by you, I think, could appear to be fast, but it might not actually be going
Right.
fast.
And then the turn, like I'm thinking of kind of King, Maple, St. Paul, where there's already the traffic calming. And just when a bus has to turn, and then kind of what happens with the other traffic. So I'm not arguing for like speed, but arguing for making sure that the turning radius allows for, I don't know what the bus routes are. I know that we talked in connecting, oh my God, Bank and Cherry, right? Making sure that at least like a bus could go kind of straight across, so that they're not doing a whole lot of turns, because then if it's like a wide turn, then the cars need to back up, and it just
Right.
creates like more crunch.
And let's not forget
Yes.
fire trucks.
And fire truck, oh, I'm sure the fire truck will have to go through there.
You're talking
before
about turning
anything.
templates, and
We have a program.
we do have a program for that, software program that we run. And after the adjustments we made at Maple and St. Paul around the Great Streets project, we're especially attuned to that on the front end, so that there's limited rework on the back end.
It does happen. You design things as best you can, and we do have programs where we can put whatever vehicle and see how it turns and how it moves, and sometimes we have to rebuild, like we did at Maple and St. Paul.
Okay. Great, no, I love all these ideas, and appreciate any input on, around Edmonds.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's all.
appreciate the consistent message.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I also am a big fan of that idea, and I'm aware of some of the research around reduced speed significantly contributing to reduced injuries, and in collisions involving multiple vehicles or vehicle to person. And I think even maybe just to point out how it's maybe even better than that graph from the Seattle group indicated, is that that has to do with fatalities after the accident has occurred. But of course, this is very likely to reduce the likelihood of an accident ever occurring in the first place. So I think it's even even better than that kind of bar chart suggests. I just don't really know much about road design, and so I'm a little curious about kind of some evidence about how maybe like what's most impactful about road design, reducing speed, what's kind of the, maybe one thing that I'm curious about is like stop signs versus roundabouts, other things maybe like that, if you could expand on.
So if you think about field of vision, if we have a very wide street, there's two ways that we're kind of controlling that field of vision. Either we are expanding the road and the space, and okay, I can see a lot, and I feel like I can go fast, or we narrow the space, we narrow it, we neck it down, we take away space. I think if I had to teach a class on transportation design, that one word is space. How much space? And by necking things down, by narrowing things, visually and physically, it makes drivers, they have to slow down. They feel like they want to slow down, right? So I think that's one thing but also downtown, you have all these other street users, right? You have people on bicycles, you have pedestrians, you have buses, you have all these activities, things are happening. And designing the street in such a way with curb bump outs, right? So you have space. So for example, on St. Paul Street, we have these wonderful curb bump outs where parking is kind of pocketed inside, right? That's a design feature where at the nodes, the intersections, you have these pinch points that are telling people, okay, I gotta slow down. And as I make that turn, I'm not gonna be able to step on the gas and really screech around the corner. I have to slow down, or I don't wanna hit the car that's waiting at that stop sign as well. So things like that, different materials as well. Does that help?
Oh yeah, definitely. How does the different materials aspect work? Like maybe like going across Church Street where it's got the brick, or
great example would be University Place. A lot of pedestrian activity on University Place, and so one thing that we came up with for a solution is there were crosswalks everywhere, and more is not necessarily better when you think about crosswalks. So we consolidated all those crosswalks to a crossing plaza that we raised, and we made it into almost like a red brick pattern that's stamped. And that visually and physically, because you ride over it, right? You got a little like vibration going there. You see it, there's bollards, these giant, stainless steel bollards sitting there. It's a different feel. And physically and visually, it makes people slow down.
Okay, awesome. I maybe share Commissioner Barr's comment on maybe less than 20 would be better. I don't know. That's an interesting idea. I don't want to, at that point, I think you start having to deal with like a more graduated concept where like it wouldn't be the whole downtown core that would be treated the same, because you don't want to have everywhere only 10, 15 miles an hour. But with the, I guess maybe particularly my concern that would give rise to me thinking about a speed limit lower than 20 would be like people exiting driveways. I think that's like a common area where people can wind up getting in a bad spot. I don't know how many driveways are in the downtown core like image we had there. It may not be very many. I'm not sure.
They exist.
Okay.
It's not like any residential streets. But the difficulty is achieving that design speed requires an even more restrictive area. And then now the buses and the trucks, now you got congestion problems.
I see.
And vehicles are not going to be able to get through like they used. There's cascading effects to the rest of the transportation system, because we do want to get people out of the downtown core and onto the arterials and on their way wherever they're trying to go.
In terms of kind of the enforcement and compliance, I I guess first, how is compliance measured now?
Well, we collect data on several city streets with radar and with ETRs. So we set it up and we get classifications of vehicles, how heavy they are, trucks, and how fast they're going. So that gives us information in terms of like the enforcement piece. That's the Burlington Police Department. And, as I already said, that's a little bit of a challenge for them right now.
Yeah, I was mostly curious about that first part, about just knowing
We collect data.
what the compliance percentages are in the first place, because if they, I know they're not, but if they're already 100%, then they'd be like, oh, this is great.
We never get 100%.
Oh, yeah.
The
Of course.
number we would seek in terms of a design speed is 85th percentile. So we would want that design speed to be that 85th percentile.
Okay.
Right? So a great example of that would be Star Farm Road. Star Farm Road, pretty wide, pretty flat, pretty straight, not a lot of cars parked. It invites people to go fast. But there's some design features close to the bike path that slow people down, right? We have, it's kind of a pinch point. There's different textures, there's different signs. We collected data there, and the 85th percentile speed adjacent to the bike path, at least the latest data, is around 20 miles per hour. We collect data on that.
Okay, that's awesome. In terms of things like speed bumps and things like that, are they very effective? Is that something that is?
Well, they can be,
Okay.
but not just on its own. You want more than one traffic calming feature in order for them to be effective. You wouldn't just put one speed hump in and say, okay, well, that's good. You want a series of traffic calming features in order to make things effective.
Okay. And something that, it could be unrelated, but I'm curious, and it might wind up being related. So here at this intersection right here.
Sure.
Lakeside and Pine, I noticed there are like camera things up on top of the traffic signals now. Are those the Department of Public Works?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are not related to enforcement from the police department?
No, but they do collect data.
Okay.
Yeah, we get data from those as well, and we're upgrading those all the time. But currently, we do not have the ability to use camera for enforcement.
Okay.
For speed.
Gotcha. I've lived in some places where that is possible,
Oh,
and I
sure.
wasn't sure if it was,
Yeah.
how integrated the use of those was, if it was like the Department of Public Works split them up and then the police department sends out the tickets or whatever, so.
Right,
okay.
right.
It's like not at all in Vermont, right?
I don't think-
Camera
I don't think
controlled.
it is in Vermont at all.
Is that,
Yeah, I believe it's gonna take a statute change, and that's a long process, so.
Oh, okay.
And I'm
Good.
sure very expensive to get it up and running.
Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks a ton for the information, and overall, I'm very supportive. In terms of, I guess I do have one more question, and that just comes down to cost.
Yep.
So I totally get where you're coming from with you add in more design features, you are taking up more space with other things, that's gonna cost more money, you get a very, very low marginal benefit in terms of speed reduction, likely going below like 20 miles an hour, like you were saying.
Yep.
What type of, I guess, to give me a frame of reference, like how much would it cost to make a block, like a street, 1 block's worth of a street
Sure.
stretch, go from the 25 it's already at?
Mhm.
And so I guess this is assuming not the streets that you mentioned are already designed for 20, but like a street that's,
So I would say, if we're thinking about like Main Street, Great Street as an example, it's pretty expensive.
well, yeah, I would guess.
And that entire street is being redesigned, rebuilt, reconstructed with 20 miles per hour as the design speed in mind for all ages, all users of bicycles and pedestrians. And it is a pedestrian, bicycle, car user, all user street. So how much is Main Street, Great Street?
Yes,
A lot.
35 million for 3 blocks, but a lot of it's the ravine sewer.
It's a lot of infrastructure work. I would say if it was like $1.3 million a mile would probably be a good estimate.
In terms of like a retrofit, I guess
Yeah,
we'd
if
be
you're
talking about.
retrofitting like a residential street or a downtown street, you could, but more, I mean, more. Because you always, there's other things that you're talking about, utilities and infrastructure.
This goes a bit beyond the scope, so feel free to stop me if someone needs to, of the downtown core situation.
Sure.
But I think there's a natural question and extension of, so the state says we can't have speed limits less than 25 miles an hour outside of the designated downtown area. But streets could be designed such that their design speed was less than 25 miles an hour.
That's very true.
Okay. Has there been any consideration to that in certain,
We talk
like
about
in
it.
certain key areas?
We talk about it all the time.
Okay, I figured. I'm not
Yeah, no.
trying to imply that you're not thinking about it.
We do that everywhere.
Okay.
Anytime that we're putting in traffic calming, it is to achieve speeds that are less than 25 miles per hour.
Okay. Well, great. Yeah, that's great information. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Sears?
That was a great presentation. Thank you. I think it sounds great. And to Peggy's point, and sorry, I didn't catch your name.
I'm Jacob.
Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't make it tonight.
Oh, no problem.
Good to meet you. Yeah, I guess a downtown slow zone does kind of beg for a school slow zone. I wonder if that could be the next step. And I'm thinking like every school, or maybe every elementary school in the city, if this is a direction that, if you're looking at reducing speeds, that would be a logical next step. So yes, I think 20 sounds great downtown. I would encourage you to consider other areas that could also use some calming if the speed limit can't actually be reduced to 20. If some really aggressive calming could go in, that would encourage compliance with 20 or even compliance with 25 miles per hour. I did have a question though. There was a slide that showed 3 speed limits. And I was just wondering what they were. It was pretty early on. So if the lowest is 20, I'm assuming the next is 25, and I just wasn't sure where you would find 30 in Burlington. Maybe there's one section of North Ave. I wasn't sure if there was any place else.
North
Keep
Ave,
going back, I think.
Shelburne Street.
Oh, Shelburne.
Yep.
So you would keep those at 30?
For the time being,
For now.
there is a plan to look at a corridor study for Shelburne Street, especially once the parkway is constructed and we know traffic levels there. We know we need to increase the number of crosswalks along Shelburne Street. And so I think that the speed limit would be revisited as part of those retrofits.
Yep.
But it would be 20, 25, and 30.
We can't go less than 25 outside of the designated downtown district. As of right now, there are
Yeah.
folks and advocates that are working to get the state to make adjustments to that law. Local Motion is working on that right now.
But you wouldn't go above 30?
No.
And you would, okay, yep. But then the bulk of the city would be 25?
Well, the bulk of the city is 25.
Is 25, right. I guess I'm just saying that everything else would stay the same. You're just looking at reducing the downtown core to 20.
Correct. Which is what is recommended in the 2011 transportation plan and what was attempted to be put through in 2011. It didn't, but now we're doing it. So.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for the slides.
No problem.
I guess I only have 2 comments. I just wanted to echo, I think, what Commissioner Davis said of sort of designing streets, even if they are 25, looking at other ways. And I think the department is doing that with like all the traffic calming that we just, the temporary traffic calming that the department talked about last month. And I saw the outreach materials today about that. So I think that's certainly addressing some of that. I think when this particular item comes back to the commission, I think I'd like to just see sort of all the streets that are being affected by this speed limit change, and sort of, a lot of them are the great streets, up to the great street standards, like you said, meeting 20. I think getting an idea of all the other streets, what could be done to those streets or is already planned for those streets from a street design standpoint, just so we sort of know the roadmap of, we understand it's not going to happen immediately on hopefully the streets that already have the Great Street standards.
Yeah.
We'll be at that 20. These other streets will be maybe in 2 years, we'll get to that, and then these other ones maybe in 5 years, or whatever the timeline looks like.
Right.
I think that'd be helpful for the commission as we look at potentially adopting that speed limit change.
Yeah, I think the most challenging streets are gonna be, those arterials, Battery.
Battery, yeah.
And, Winooski might be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, even
Battery's definitely gonna be a challenging street, and we know that, and we have designs. It's just, all right, we need to find funding, and how are we gonna do this correctly?
Great.
Can I
Yeah.
add
Yeah.
just something kind of on that same topic? In terms of a proposal, is there, because I just don't even know what one would even look like, just starting out here, but is there a concept of like doing the least expensive streets first, then the more expensive ones? Is there some other like planning mechanism that's going to affect the timing?
In terms of instituting 20 miles per hour.
Yes.
So, I don't know what the public outreach looks like. I can tell you what I think we will do, is we will take these streets, these downtown district streets, and that's what we'll bring in fall. These are all gonna be 20 miles per hour. Achieving compliance based on designs is gonna be tough.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right.
So the actual posted speed limit will be 20.
Right.
And then the designs will follow that.
Some of them will have to.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Main Street's happening now. St. Paul Street's already happening. Other streets will come along over time.
And I think that's where that matrix will hopefully help
Yes.
us,
Yeah.
as we just
Exactly.
contextualize what is being planned for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Any additional items for this particular item? I know if anybody from the public has any comments on this.
There's no one online or to.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We appreciate the general support we're hearing. This sounds great. It was a disappointment the last time we brought this forward 10, 13 years ago, and it was not successful. I look forward to getting it across the finish line this time.
We will.
Great. Next is item 8, scheduling commission work session on FY25 goals. I guess I'll take this one. I'll start with this. Yeah, I think this was something that came up a couple months ago by the commission to sort of think more strategically about how we can be more effective at the work that the commission is looking at, recognizing the limited staff time, where can we help fill in those gaps as members of the public, working with our community to move forward a lot of the items that we talked about. I'll say I really appreciated the sort of conversational nature in even today's meeting, and I think I'd like to see more of that and hopefully figure out how we can incorporate that into a lot of these things that we do want to review, again, recognizing the constraints, but moving forward on a lot of items such as, I know one big thing that the commission has talked about is really focusing on neighborhoods and sort of the neighborhood feel and ensuring that we're doing a lot of those projects in sort of the more residential neighborhoods as well as downtown areas.
The easy wins.
The easy wins, exactly. So I think, I plan on sending out some form of calendar scheduling to figure out, doodle poll or something to figure out when we can meet, hopefully sometime soon, again, with the sort of scope of this fiscal year, and hopefully do this more often. I know we don't have a meeting in August, but I don't know, we'll see with the doodle poll, maybe end of August, early September, we can meet on that.
Would this work session be subject to public meeting law? So this would be an additional meeting on top of our normally scheduled one, where we would be discussing these goals and sort of formalizing that in a public setting. Is that, did I understand it correctly?
That's correct, yeah.
That
I think,
rocks. That
we
sounds
work
like a lot
to
of fun.
figure out what some of those items would look like, because I think there's also just a lot of education pieces that we as a commission need from staff, so figuring out the staff side as well as our own
And
schedules.
that's planning that can happen via email, right? As far as the actual
Scheduling.
agenda and largely
Yep, that's okay.
goals for the meeting. Sweet.
Would we be able to use this room, and would it have CCTA, or is it just?
I think we could, host it however you want. It will need to be publicly warned and have an opportunity for the public to come and participate and speak at public forum. And then after that, it could just be an open session of you all discussing how to set your goals for the year. And we're happy to support in whatever way possible.
Yeah, I think Vice Chair Fox and I will probably meet to work out some of that in advance.
Sweet.
Sounds good.
Any other comments on that item? Anything else to consider?
No action needed.
No action needed. Director's report.
All right, let me pull it up here so I remember what I said. I will just hit some high points here. I was really pleased. On Monday night, the City Council did support the Bank and Cherry design. And that was, I just want to say, the Commission's perspective was very helpful in sharing that with the Council in their consideration, so that we can now bring Bank and Cherry into the federal permit review process with a preferred alternative that the Council has now selected. So that is significant progress. I was also really excited to share the good news that we received 4 bids for the final phase of the Champlain Parkway final construction contract, and they were all very competitive, and I will say below our engineer's estimate, which is unusual these days. So we're expecting to have more information soon and to go to the council on the 12th of August for approval of that contract, and that work can start in September. I'll let Rob speak to the public engagement plan review that we have upcoming and any other items.
Yeah, thank you, Chapin. We will be very excited to share with you updates, refinements to the public engagement plan, go over some of the successes I think we have as a department enjoyed, as well as some of the things that we need your assistance on, some feedback on, and ways to improve gaps that we just might not see. So with that said, we were thinking of bringing a preview to it this month, but the mayor, who has, I think, put a big emphasis on public engagement, is convening a lot of city staff who work regularly on engagement to have a broader discussion about what can be standardized, what efficiencies, resources can kind of be centralized to make sure we're, as a city, speaking with one voice. I'm looking forward to being a part of that conversation in a few weeks. So I thought that would be a good idea to let that inform some of the steps I think we're taking to update our engagement plan, which hasn't had a major overhaul since about 2018. Put a lot of, we have a good framework around what we do, but I think there's always room for improvement. So we'll look forward to having more information at the next meeting. I'll steal some of Philip's glory since he's gone already, but if you have been up on Stanbury Road, the pedestrian pilot project has recently been activated. The speed humps, rubber speed humps that are going out on 3 or 4 different city streets were just received today, and they will be going out shortly. Chair mentioned some of the outreach material. We did try to put out some educational information today, and we'll hopefully do a little bit more neighborhood-based outreach over the coming days as installations continue to happen. We are directing people through the traffic calming program, so as you get requests from neighbors or if you have your own requests, the traffic calming program is going to be the way that our team's managing these. Right now that's live on our homepage, so you don't have to memorize anything too crazy in terms of a URL. Send them right to DPW's homepage for more information and to submit a request. We should share that Main Street over the next few weeks, probably before we have our next commission meeting, is going to be closed between Church and Winooski as work advances. We've previewed that for some of the major businesses and stakeholders downtown that's coming. And so as the schedule advances and the traffic control plan is approved and finalized, if you're signed up for the weekly email list, you'll get more news about that. But we just want to preview that now that that's on the way, so nobody's caught off guard. In a few weeks, CSWD is going to be reopening the Pine Street location to more than just recycling and organics. It'll also include a more streamlined trash drop off. They will be sharing more information. We're going to piggyback on that. I think they're pretty happy about being able to do that. Our team, led by Director Spencer and Assistant Director Perry, Division Director Perry, have worked hard for a number of years to make this work. So we're excited to be able to share that with the community.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
So excited.
Many of us are. We bring trash to work and go over there. So.
There you go.
And finally, we do want to let you know that next time, sorry, not next time, but one of the next times over the next 2 or 3 months when you visit burlingtonvt.gov, there will be a new website live. So that's being managed by our IT department with a lot of departmental assistance. We have some big trainings coming up. Bear with us as the transition happens. As you probably know, IT transitions can always be rocky. We'd love feedback if there are things missing that you were relying on, because we are making some resource choices about what can be carried over, what will eventually be carried over, and maybe what it's time to lose. But if things are missing, if things are not working, if you're noticing anything on the website as that transition happens over the next 2 months, you can reach directly out to me, certainly reach directly out to the IT office if it's a more global issue you're noticing. But we just wanted to share that so nobody's caught off guard or surprised when that happens. So thank you.
And we should just say that in the consent agenda, you approved the annual report to the council. The council staffer, Lori Olberg, loves to have these signed by the commission. So once the commission meeting ends, if you can all get out your pens and give us your best signature, that would be appreciated.
Any questions on the director's report? Any items on the director's report?
I have at least one question, which is the 4 bids on the Champlain Parkway coming in low, lower than you expected. I mean, are they so low that there's cause for concern, or is it like, this is great?
We are doing the bid review now to make sure that they are fully compliant, acceptable, and appropriate. So once we complete that bid review, I'll have more to share with you. But generally, I'm confident that we did get 4 responsive bids. I believe it's that our team, after struggling with the first round and having for the last couple of years, seeing the inflationary impacts that the engineer's estimate factored all those in this time, and there was enough competition to get very responsive bids, so we're exceptionally pleased.
Awesome, thanks.
Great. Commissioner items. Start with Commissioner Sears.
I don't have any items.
Commissioner Muteno.
All right. Where to start? Opening date for the Champlain Parkway is slated for next month. Is there a precise date or opening ribbon cutting sort of thing planned?
That work will be announced soon. I do not believe at this point we have a date, right, Rob?
No date yet.
Good.
Coming.
Right.
But yes, next month, August.
All right.
Sometime.
And then for the partially treated sewage overflow, is the one incident this month just last week's storm? There were no other rain events caused any issues?
Combined sewer overflow?
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
Yeah, we have had a few combined sewer
Yeah.
overflows over the last few storms, and the most recent one was at Pine Street, which has traditionally been, since we rediscovered it back in 2016, the most vexing CSO in that it goes off the most. We did have one other one, was at Gazo Avenue, I think, that went off unusually, which it rarely goes off anymore. We have a great chart that we should make more use of to share with you that shows the historic number of CSOs actually going well down over time, and certainly over the last decade with all the green infrastructure investments that have gone in over the city, including above the Pine Street CSO. But to your point, it's been, I think, Pine Street and I think it was Gazo, but they're posted by our wastewater staff when they happen. they're permanently posted at the outfall itself and then posted within a mile of the discharge to advise the public. So for Pine Street, Blodgett Access Area and Perkins Pier get posted physically for 48 hours after a discharge.
Okay. I actually think that would be really helpful to have that information for myself. Yeah, I didn't know the, I guess, geographic extent of these various locations, and it would be helpful, like, just to understand
We can share that
better
with
for the
you.
city.
We can share with you the notification list that the state maintains for when any of these go off, so you could be, if you chose to be, you could be notified as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Barr?
Thanks. Caught me trying to write them all down so I wouldn't forget them, but anyway. So specific to the Old East End, we've had a couple of meetings there for various different reasons. But one of the things that I wanted to bring forward was thanks for the speedy recovery of the speed limit speed reader sign.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful. But I think it's working. That there might be some brush trimming around it maybe because the tree is already growing out in front of it. But I think for the most part it's welcome back in the neighborhood. And one of the staff mentioned the emplacement of temporary speed bumps, and they were just curious when that would happen. I said I would bring that up.
They were received today, so I think it's a matter of when our street team can fit that into
Has
their work
time,
schedule.
okay.
I think we're thinking in the next few weeks.
Okay, perfect. I'll let them know that. And lastly, I did notice the change to the distance, the bump out at the head of Chase Street. It was quite a bit more, and it's now reduced back. But there was a question about when the actual pylons were going to be in place too, because although the chicane parking change is working when there's 2 lanes of traffic during the whatever rush hour might be on a street like ours, but when there's no oncoming traffic, cars are still going down 50 miles an hour. So anything that we can do to change that, the neck of the street, would be very much appreciated. And I think
And by the neck, you're talking about the Colchester Ave intersection?
yeah, the bump outs. And I still have one of the pylons that got booted into my hedge. I didn't want it to get thrown away, so if you're going to reuse it, I can pull that one out for you.
Jim's got a stash in his head.
I do. Or I could put it in front of my driveway too to slow traffic. Thanks. That's it.
Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco?
Couple things. Just want to echo Mr. Flash emailed us about College Street. I think I mentioned College Street paving. Back at the start of Main Street, just biking up there. The holes have not gotten smaller since the winter. As a street that many bicyclists prefer to ride up that hill as opposed to Main Street because there's bus traffic, so it's slower. It just feels a little bit more, just feels a little calmer. And then to really have to kind of go so far into the lane because of the potholes. I certainly kind of feel his pain. Also appreciate Director Spencer's response about the limited, the financial constraints that the city's under. So I think recognizing that, what is it, how many miles? We're only one, yeah, that would be one. How many miles? One per year. So again, seeing like what does the future hold? Can this be patched? The bicycling season goes on for several more months. So if it can't be paved, what can we do? Would be great. I do appreciate the paint and the whatever sparkly stuff on Prospect Street, where I cross on South Prospect by Redstone Campus. Those crosswalks were redone. Thank you. And I guess, comment to Mr. Goulding earlier about the city kind of consolidating or coming together a little bit more and speaking in one voice on public engagement. I do really want to let you know that I think public engagement from the department has come so far, and you do such a fantastic job that I hope, I really hope that you can elevate all that you have done, recognizing that there's always space for improvement. And I think perhaps this consolidation, or not, I'm using that word. I shouldn't use that word, not consolidation, but at least singing from the same hymn book or whatever it is, will only strengthen the messages from all the city departments. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
You've done such a good job. And then finally, are you going to mention this about possibly changing the day or the week of the commission?
Oh, yes. There was, I can't remember, I think that was just between two of us, but yes, there was some potential discussion of looking at a different alternative day and potentially time of the week to meet, given a couple commissioners' potential constraints. I think we can maybe do that. Is that allowed via email to discuss that?
You're allowed to discuss scheduling meetings without it being an open meeting law violation.
Okay.
And I'll try and include that in the doodle survey, whatever form that we use to gather input for sort of the commissioners' retreat. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Okay.
And would that be a one-time change, or are we moving away
Potentially-
from
potentially-
third Wednesday at
Potentially.
6:30?
If it doesn't work, we'll probably end up staying with the same time and date, but I think there's a lot of factors, staff and commission, so. Commissioner Davis?
Well, on that same topic of the days and times meeting, has there ever been any consideration of meeting more frequently or less frequently? I'm just curious, about how mechanically this has worked.
We've always met every month.
Yeah.
Except
Okay.
August.
Well, there's
For
been
time immemorial.
Unless we had to meet in August.
Yeah.
Oh, we had, one.
Yeah, there were times that we did meet in August, but
Yeah.
special meetings.
Staff very much appreciates the monthly meetings. It's easier to plan, and there are enough timely items that meeting monthly is helpful to keeping the public business flowing. We have had, I think it was just January, February this year, where we canceled the meeting because there weren't urgent items. So no sense to meet unless there is really a compelling agenda. But the good news is we work well with the chair to kind of manage the agenda and have the vice chair and the chair kind of weigh in on the draft agenda. And we'll continue to do that. And if there's no reason to meet, we won't convene a meeting.
Okay. I guess this is kind of related, but kind of follow up to what you just mentioned. With agendas, how does something get put on an agenda?
So, I mean, the typical process is that staff sends a draft agenda to the chair and vice chair. From there, those two officers provide comments. But if there are other items that other commissioners would like to see, I think just emailing the chair and vice chair and Director Spencer. And we can work out and see if there's room on a particular agenda. I think one of the things as part of the retreat is really getting a sense of what is the work for the entire year, so we can figure out where those gaps are to put in discuss other items that I think the commission is certainly interested in discussing.
Okay, awesome, thanks. Yeah, just didn't know, so good to know.
Now you do.
In terms of other items, during this meeting, the departments mentioned some items that have been more than a decade in wanting to be done but weren't able to be done. Is there something on the commission side that we can do to bring forward those ideas that have kind of been languishing?
Get more funding.
You should go rob a bank together.
I keep
guys.
buying lottery tickets.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
I'll just say I think that was sort of the impetus for having this particular strategic session is because of the sort of financial limitations, and we certainly want to do more. So trying to figure out how we can advocate for that funding that, as the city allocates its budget, we want to see, I think, more money go towards Department of Public Works projects.
Okay,
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think, can I add,
Yeah.
as former chair? You know, as I mentioned earlier, like, the easy wins, so,
The low-hanging
you know, what we
fruit.
talked about in a dinner, you kind of, you pay attention to what's happening right in front of your sidewalk. So what are some of the low-hanging fruits? We have a lot of, like, huge projects going on right now in the city, and it's kind of like, you know, mending your socks and underwear. It's not, some of it's just not very exciting until it's all done, right? But people aren't appreciating like the amount of work going into the ravine project. They're thinking about, you know, my sidewalk isn't paved, or there are potholes in the street. So how do we balance like highlighting the work that's being done in these capital projects with some of these smaller, easy wins that are quick builds and lower cost and kind of high value to the community?
Okay. That's a great explanation. I guess with the 2011 parking, or not parking, speed limit
Slow speed, yeah.
thing, I just, is there a mechanism that we as the commissioners would be aware of such a thing, like that was done in the past? That's really my, like, not really concern, but something where like it'd be great to not just have something that's like, oh, I didn't know already this legwork was done, and like it just kind of needed some additional discussion.
Could that be brought up in this?
Yeah, I think in the meeting,
The
we
meeting,
can
yeah.
talk about historical projects, and I think there's certainly opportunities where even if it didn't pass 10, 15 years ago, a lot of things have changed in Burlington in the past 10, 15 years, and I think we can look at strategically where are items that we can try and push that again, because it makes sense and the climate is good for that, and maybe some areas where we rethink what we're sort of pushing.
The RPP is a good example of that.
Okay.
A lot of work, I was a member of the committee putting it together, and we went through months and months of, and had all sorts of folks involved with scoping studies and everything, and we thought we had a great plan until we pitched it, and then there was a lot of outcry from the public, which caused us to sit back. So, but now here we are, implementing again, so.
Gotcha, okay.
Lots of good stuff.
All right, and then my kind of, again, please stop me if I force us to go too long here, but I live on Lakeside Avenue, so I have a, you know, like we all do, I have a different viewpoint of my particular area. And I was curious about some things like I greatly despise this intersection right now, Pine and Lakeside, not really having, the traffic pattern is difficult to discern. So I didn't know if that was part of the Champlain Parkway plan where it's going to be done. Okay, it is.
Yes, the intersection will be receiving its top coat of pavement in the next week or two, maybe 3, but I believe it's coming up in the very near term. And once the pavement is put down, the final top coat, it will receive the permanent markings. So the permanent markings will be there within a month. I know that the temporary markings have mostly worn away, and that the traffic positioning is a bit hard to discern there. That will be fixed in the next month with the permanent application.
Okay, awesome. An issue that I think is unrelated to the Champlain Parkway that I have considered since 3 years ago moving into the Lakeside neighborhood is we only have one entrance and exit on Lakeside Avenue itself. For vehicles at least, and it being under the like railway pass, and for a while the ice would develop there and never go away, but I think that was fixed by the department a year or two ago.
Still there. There's tremendous groundwater weeping there. We can certainly.
I just meant the drainage there being kind of like cleaned out, or this really cool truck came and did some stuff, and really that helped a lot from the first winter that I was there. But in terms of that being the only entry and exit point for the neighborhood, I don't know if there are other neighborhoods that have a similar situation here in Burlington, but it concerns me from a safety perspective of it would be easy for it to be blocked off and emergency vehicles not able to get in. Maybe that's a bit paranoid of me, but that's something that has concerned me some living there. And it seemed to me that it would be possible from just walking around the neighborhood and being in there that there's I don't even know what the name of the street is, but the street at the end of the neighborhood, at the south end of the neighborhood that's going parallel to Lakeside, has these...
Harrison and
Sears Lane
Sears Lane.
connected?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes,
Would
yeah,
that be the idea?
Exactly. Where the railway is, and like people can walk across there, as I've done plenty, but it's not open to vehicles. I was curious if there had been thought given to that being a secondary entry or exit, or if that's something that concerned anyone else, or that sort of thing. I was just curious about that.
There are gates for emergency access. Fire department has the ability to cross them, and I am sure that the railroad is exceedingly reluctant to add another formalized crossing across their yard there. So emergency access does have access to gates that are largely vegetated over, but can be opened as needed for emergency access.
Oh, great. Okay. I didn't even know that, so I feel much better knowing that that's the case. All right. Yeah, that is all I've got. Thanks.
The only commissioner comment I had was after speaking with some folks, some members of the public, I just wanted to pass along some kudos to Julia and Maddie from the members of the public that I spoke with. So they spoke very highly of work that they worked on with those folks.
Awesome. Thank you. We will pass that along.
Maybe about
and,
Maddie, I don't remember.
Yeah.
We got the right
Yes.
team.
Yes.
We just
Yes.
need to fill a few open positions.
Yes. So just wanted to make sure that was
Great.
noted. I believe that's it for Commissioner.
Motion to adjourn.
Jim's ready.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Saying aye?
Aye.
Aye for myself. The meeting is concluded.
Hey.
Until you sign.
I think
Yeah.
we
No,
already,
actually,
we
it's
already
that.
lost.
Last year, I think we had everyone sign by their name
Okay.
on the front page there.